In the shadowed corners of her mind, Maya navigates a fragile peace, where echoes of doubt whisper that her silence is both shield and cage. She's learned to move through life with careful steps, yearning for a love that sees her truly, unmarred by the fractures of a past she can't fully claim. Yet beneath the surface, calm, a quiet storm brews, pulling her toward the courage to speak her truth. As dawn breaks over her solitary world, the morning light filters through half-drawn blinds. The morning light filters through half-drawn blinds, casting pale stripes across Maya's apartment. A compact studio where every corner hums with quiet order. She rises from the bed, sheets smoothed with mechanical precision, her hands moving like clockwork. The coffee maker gurgles in the kitchenette, steam rising in lazy curls as she measures grounds, the scent sharp but distant, like something observed from afar. Her bare feet pad across the cool hardwood, silent, deliberate. Outwardly, it's seamless. A woman in her 30s, hair pulled into a loose knot, face composed in that soft neutrality that passes for peace. But inside, the weight presses. Each step feels heavier than it should, limbs dragging through invisible silt. Her fingers tremble faintly as she pours the coffee, the mug's warmth seeping into her palm, a fleeting anchor against the numbness threading her veins. I go through the motions. Her voiceover begins, low and measured, like a confession recorded in the dead of night. Wake, brew, eat, smile at the mirror if I must. It's what they expect. Calm, capable Maya. But God, the drain. It's like my bones are hollowed out, echoing with every breath. She moves to the sink, rinsing a bowl from last night's untouched dinner, water rushing cold over her skin. The ritual pulls her along, soulless as a looped film reel. Scrub, dry, stack. No rush, no fracture in the facade. Yet the ache builds, a dull throb behind her eyes, in the tightness of her shoulders. Uri always said I was too sensitive. The voiceover continues, softer now, edged with something raw. That this exhaustion was just me, overthinking. But it's there, every day, sapping the color from things. I pretend it's nothing, because what if admitting it cracks everything open? Pausing at the bathroom sink, she brushes her teeth, the mint foam mechanical on her tongue. Her gaze drifts to the mirror above, its surface cluttered with sticky notes, edges curling like tentative whispers. One reads, "Breathe," in faded blue ink. Another, half-peeled, "You are enough." She stares, the reflection staring back, eyes shadowed, lips pressed thin. The notes flutter slightly in the draft from the vent, a fragile mosaic over the glass. For a moment, the ritual falters. Her hand stills, toothbrush hovering. The numbness shifts, cracking just enough for the fatigue to seep through, warm and insistent, pooling in her chest. How long can I keep this up? The voiceover murmurs, voice threading closer to admission. The calm is a shell, and underneath, I'm so tired, tired of hiding it. She sets the toothbrush down, fingers lingering on the sink's edge. The question hanging unspoken in the steam-fogged air. Can I say it to myself? Just once. Later that afternoon, as the weight of the morning lingered, Maya found herself in a different space, drawn forward by a quiet pull. The soft afternoon light filtered through the blinds of Nadia's office, casting striped shadows across the worn leather couch where Maya sat, knees drawn up like a shield. Her fingers twisted the hem of her sweater, unraveling a loose thread as Nadia's voice cut gently through the quiet. "Tell me about the times Uri made you feel off balance," Nadia said, her tone steady, eyes meeting Maya's, without pity or pressure, just an invitation that hung in the air. Maya's mind raced ahead, a whirlwind of half-formed excuses. It wasn't that bad. He was stressed. I overreacted. She glanced at the wall behind Nadia, where a small mirror hung, its surface dotted with colorful sticky notes. "You are enough," one read in looping script. "Breathe into the truth," another. The notes blurred as Maya's gaze lingered. Her reflection fragmented, like pieces of herself she couldn't quite assemble. What if I say it out loud, and it shatters everything? "I don't know," Maya murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "He'd just question things. Like, if I was upset, he'd say I was imagining it, or too sensitive." The words tumbled out tentative, laced with doubt, her chest tightening, as if admitting them might pull her under. Nadia leaned forward slightly, notepad untouched on her lap. "Questioning your reality, that's a powerful way to shift control, isn't it? How did that leave you feeling inside?" Maya's thoughts splintered. Memories of Yuri's calm voice overlaying her confusion. Nights spent replaying conversations until she doubted her own ears. Was it control, or just love's rough edges? She shifted, eyes flicking back to the mirror. One sticky note caught her. "Your voice matters." And for a split second, she saw not just her tired face, but the woman who had silenced herself to stay safe. The doubt coiled tighter, a knot in her throat, but something stirred beneath it, insistent. "Small," Maya said finally, the word escaping like a breath held too long. "I felt small, like my feelings didn't count unless he said so." Her hands stilled, pulse quickening as the admission landed, raw and unpolished. It wasn't relief yet, just the tense edge of recognition, a crack in the wall she'd built. Nadia nodded, her presence a quiet anchor. "And naming that smallness, does it change how you see it now?" Maya's mind hovered on the question, unspoken but echoing. What if acknowledging this pain is the first step to something freer? The mirror seemed to watch her back, the notes a silent chorus, urging her forward, as the room held its breath. A few evenings later, seeking echoes of that fragile recognition, Maya ventured into a shared space where stories unfolded like her own hidden ones. The circle of folding chairs creaked under the weight of shared silences in the dimly lit community center. Maya sat on the edge, her hands folded in her lap like forgotten origami. Gaze fixed on the frayed carpet. The air hummed with the low murmur of voices, strangers, yet achingly familiar, each one peeling back layers of invisible wounds. She was numb here, a spectator in her own skin, the kind of detachment that wrapped around her like fog, blurring the line between listening and drifting away. A woman across the circle, mid-30s with tired eyes and a voice like cracked porcelain, leaned forward. He'd say, "You're imagining things again." Every time I questioned him, made me doubt my own eyes. The words landed soft but sharp, slicing through Maya's haze. Gaslighting. The term floated in the room like an echo she'd heard before, in Nadia's office, but now it pulsed with others' breath. Another man, broad-shouldered and hesitant, added, "It wasn't shouts or fists. It was the slow rewrite of who you are, until you apologize for feeling anything at all." Maya's chest tightened, a quiet storm brewing beneath the calm. These stories weren't just theirs. They mirrored the fragments she'd buried, the late-night confessions, where Yuri's voice twisted her doubts into weapons, his concern, a veil for control. She could almost hear him now, smooth and insistent. "You're too sensitive, Maya. Let it go." Part of her wanted to cling to that script, to stay silent and safe in the narrative he'd scripted for her. Speaking it aloud, would shatter the fragile peace, invite the chaos of truth. But as the words circled, manipulation, emotional labor, boundaries, the numbness cracked. A flicker of recognition warmed her veins. Not loud, but insistent, like sunlight piercing clouds. Her fingers twitched toward her bag. She pulled out the journal, its cover worn soft from months of half-hearted entries. Flipping to a blank page, she sketched a weather icon, a gray swirl at first, heavy with detachment, then a tentative break of blue. The pencil trembled slightly, tracing the shift she felt but couldn't name yet. Around her, the group nodded, a ripple of quiet validation passing without demand. No one pushed, they just held space. As the facilitator wrapped up, Maya's eyes lingered on the woman's face, so much like her own reflection in fogged mirrors. Could she let these echoes rewrite her story, claim them as her own scars? The question hung, unanswered, as she slipped the journal away and rose to leave, the fog thinning just enough to glimpse the path ahead. Back in the solitude of her apartment some days later, the echoes from the group urged Maya toward a confrontation she'd long deferred. Maya sat cross-legged on the worn rug in her studio apartment, the late afternoon light filtering through half-drawn blinds like a hesitant witness. Her fingers trembled as they hovered over the locked drawer in her desk, the one she'd avoided for months, its brass key now heavy in her palm. The drawer held remnants of Uri, a tangled necklace, faded postcards, and the small digital recorder he'd once gifted her, insisting it would capture her truths. She turned the key with a click that echoed too loudly in the quiet room, the sound slicing through her frozen stillness. The anxiety thawed into something sharper, irritation bubbling under her skin, a spark of resolve igniting. She wanted to smash the device, silence the manipulation forever. But no, the echo mattered. It revealed how his words still scripted her doubts, replaying like a bad loop. She leaned closer to the recorder, eyes narrowing at the locked drawer's contents spilling slightly, a letter curling at the edges, its ink accusing her of drama. The sound pulled her deeper, Yuri's tone weaving invisible threads. "You're lucky I put up with this." And she felt the old reflex sharpen, her pulse quickening, not in fear, but in recognition. Each phrase landed differently now. She traced the tremor in her hands, the way her shoulders tensed at sensitive. But this time, she named it silently. Not her failing, his control. The audio looped faintly as she paused it, the room reclaiming its quiet. But the reverberations lingered. Support wasn't in those echoes. It was in the distance they'd carved, in voices like Nadia's waiting questions or Jonah's steady presence. Freedom, she realized amid the irritation, came from voicing this invisible violence, word by word. Could she finally hear his phrases as echoes, not her own? The key lay beside the recorder, drawer ajar, waiting. With those echoes still resonating, Maya returned to Nadia's office soon after, where new insights began to sharpen her understanding. The therapist's office felt like a soft cage, sunlight filtering through half-drawn blinds onto the low table between them. Maya sat curled in the armchair, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, eyes fixed on the worn carpet. Nadia leaned forward, her voice steady as a metronome, flipping through a notebook. "Emotional labor," Nadia said. "It's the invisible work we do to manage not just our own feelings, but everyone else's too. Keeping the peace, reading the room, smoothing over tensions. And covert control, that's when someone twists that labor against you. Subtly, so you question if it's even happening. They make you doubt your own exhaustion, turn your empathy into a weapon they wield. Maya's mind reeled, a fog of confusion settling in. Is that what it was? Uri's voice echoed unbidden. You're too sensitive, babe. Just relax. She'd spent nights mapping his moods like weather patterns, anticipating the storm before it broke, always the one to apologize first. But naming it? No. That felt like cracking open a door she wasn't ready for. Exposed. Raw. Nadia's eyes held hers. Gentle, but unyielding. It's not about blame, Maya. It's about seeing the pattern. Uri's words. Did they ever make you feel like your emotions were the problem? The question hung, pulling at threads Maya had buried. Her chest tightened, confusion swirling into something sharper, a flare of anger, hot and unfamiliar, rising like bile. Not the problem? I was the one always fixing, always shrinking. She glanced at the small mirror on the wall, propped against a shelf, its surface dotted with faded sticky notes. Breathe. You are enough. One peeled at the edge, half obscuring the reflection of her own wide eyes. Who had written that? Not her, not yet. It wasn't physical, Maya murmured, resisting, her thoughts a whirlwind. Don't say it. It'll make it real. But the anger pushed back, a visceral knot in her gut twisting free. Jonah's words from last week echoed faintly. I've been there, man. Calling it out, that's how you breathe again. Support, not pity. Nadia nodded, refusing to let the moment slip into neutralization. Emotional abuse counts, Maya. It's control disguised as care. What word would you use for it now? The air thickened, internal tension coiling like a spring. Maya's gaze locked on the mirror, the sticky notes blurring as anger crested. That fear in my head, his voice, not mine. Abuse, she whispered, the word escaping like a breath held too long. It tasted like freedom, sharp and true, but in the quiet aftermath, a question lingered, unanswered. Was this fear just another echo of him, or could she finally claim it as her own to silence? Encouraged by that breakthrough, Maya carried the journal's icons and her budding resolve into the park one crisp afternoon, where a small test awaited. Maya sat on the worn park bench, the late afternoon sun filtering through the leaves in soft, dappled patterns. Her journal lay open beside her, its pages dotted with tiny weather icons, storm clouds for the bad days, tentative suns for the glimpses of calm. Today, she'd sketched a question mark, undecided. Jonah approached with his easy stride, coffee in hand, oblivious to the knot tightening in her chest. Hey, Maya, he said, settling down. Quick favor. The group's potluck this weekend. Could you handle the dessert again? Last time was killer, and I'm swamped with work. The words landed like a familiar weight. She could feel the old script unspooling in her mind. Smile, agree, swallow the drain on her energy. Uri's voice echoed faintly in memory. You're so good at this. Why fight it? Her fingers brushed the journal's edge, tracing a recent icon, a single ray breaking through clouds from yesterday's therapy breakthrough. Nadia's words resurfaced. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose to open. Her heart raced, pulse hammering in her ears. Panic clawed up. What if he pulls away? What if I'm too much again? The choice loomed, sharp as the autumn chill. Yield like always, or claim this sliver of space. Jonah waited, expectant, his smile patient, but insistent. I can't this time, she said, the words tumbling out hoarse, unadorned. No excuses, no softening, just the truth, raw and unpracticed. His eyebrows lifted, but he nodded slowly. Okay, no worries. Everything all right? The air held for a beat, her breath shallow. Would this fracture them? Push him toward the skepticism she'd feared from the world. But, As the silence stretched, not breaking into accusation, a quiet unfurling began inside her, like the journal's sun icon blooming fuller. Relief washed in, cool and steady, easing the vice around her ribs. She wasn't crumbling the bridge. She was testing its strength. "Yeah," she murmured, closing the journal with a soft snap. "Just learning to pace myself." The park hummed on, leaves whispering possibilities, but the real question lingered unspoken. Could this no root deep enough to weather the next storm without costing her the connections she craved? In the days that followed, another opportunity arose in the same park setting, building on that initial step. The late afternoon sun filtered through the park's canopy, casting dappled shadows on the bench where Maya sat, her journal open on her lap. The pages were dotted with small weather icons, storm clouds for the heavy days, faint suns for the fragile clears. Today, she'd sketched a tight spiral of wind, her pencil strokes hesitant, mirroring the knot in her chest. Jonah approached with his easy stride, hands in his pockets, a paper coffee cup steaming in one. "Hey, Maya, mind if I join? Been meaning to check in. How's the week treating you?" She glanced up, forcing a small smile, but her fingers tightened on the journal's edge. The anxiety bloomed quick, a familiar flutter. What if she said too much, or not enough? Jonah was one of the few who didn't push, but even his kindness felt like a spotlight. "It's okay, managing." He settled beside her, sipping his coffee, his face softening. "You know, I get that. Last year, I messed up big with a friend. Kept saying yes to everything to avoid rocking the boat. Ended up resenting them both. Took me ages to admit I needed space. Felt like admitting defeat, but it actually cleared the air." His voice was steady, no judgment, just the quiet share of a scar. Maya nodded, her gaze dropping to the journal. The wind spiral stared back, whipping tighter. Jonah's words landed soft, but they stirred the old fear. Stay agreeable, or risk fading into irrelevance. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Anyway, a few of us are doing this low-key thing tomorrow night. Coffee shop, nothing loud. Just chatting, no pressure. You in? Could be nice to unwind together." The invitation hung there, warm but insistent. Her pulse quickened, anxiety coiling like the sketch under her thumb. Say yes, quick and reactive like always. Don't complicate it. But the spiral blurred as she inhaled, pausing, really pausing, for the first time. The words clawed up, raw and unpracticed. I'd like to come, but could we keep it quieter? The noise, sometimes. It makes everything feel too much. I need that, to feel steady." Jonah's eyes met hers. No flinch, just a slow nod. "Yeah, of course. We can grab a corner table, away from the buzz. Whatever works for you." His tone wrapped around her words, validating without fanfare, and the knot in her chest eased. Just a fraction, cautious relief seeping in, like sunlight breaking a cloud line. She closed the journal, the wind icon now seeming less fierce. Had she said enough? That she wanted safety, not just quiet? The question lingered, unspoken, as they sat in the fading light. The park's hush holding space for what might come next. As these small assertions took root, Maya felt ready to confront the past more directly in her own space. The dim glow of Maya's studio apartment filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting soft shadows on the cluttered desk. A small tripod stood sentinel, its lens like an unblinking eye, waiting for her to step into frame. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the webcam, the click of the mount echoing louder than it should. Heart pounding, she sat back in her worn chair. The mirror beside her fogged slightly from her uneven breaths, sticky notes peeling at the edges. affirmations half written, half forgotten. She hit record. The red light blinked on. A tiny accusation. "Hi," she whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. The words stuck in her throat, Yuri's old echoes slithering back. "You're too sensitive. This is nothing." Anxiety coiled tight in her chest, the fear of exposure clawing at her. What if naming it made it real for everyone? What if they saw her as the broken one, not him? She could stop now, delete it all, stay safe in silence. But her fingers hovered, unmoving. This was the choice. Let his narrative linger, or shatter it with her own voice. Swallowing hard, Maya leaned forward, eyes locking onto the lens. It felt like staring into a stranger's gaze, but one she could finally direct. "Uri, you made me doubt everything. The gaslighting, that didn't happen. You're imagining it. It twisted my memories until I couldn't trust my own eyes." Her voice quivered, a knot of fear tightening, but she pressed on, the words tumbling out like long-buried stones. "The silent treatments, the way you'd twist my words back on me, making me apologize for your anger. It wasn't love, it was control. I see it now. The emotional labor you dumped on me, the covert jabs that left bruises no one could see." Pausing, she touched the locked drawer in her desk, its key glinting under the lamp. Inside, his letters, gifts like chains. She didn't open it, not yet. Instead, she straightened, breath steadying as the confession flowed freer. "I was quiet for so long, thinking silence kept me safe. But it didn't. It let you win." A small smile cracked her lips, tentative, then firming. Confidence bloomed in her chest, warm against the fading chill of dread. "I'm naming this for me, for the future I choose. One where I set boundaries, trust my intuition, and let people in who see my worth without conditions." The camera captured it all, her hands unclenching, the light catching the resolve in her eyes, scars of doubt rising like embers into quiet fire. She didn't rewind, didn't edit for perfection. As the red light held steady, her voice became the bridge, reaching beyond the screen, toward Nadia's steady questions, Jonah's grounded laugh, the echoes of the group. Healing, she realized, started here, in the raw act of speaking her truth. But could this thread hold, weaving her story anew without unraveling? With that public declaration behind her, Maya sought closure in one final session with Nadia. The therapist's office bathed in the soft, diffused light of late afternoon, shadows pooling like unspoken regrets on the worn wooden floor. Maya sat at the small desk, her fingers trembling slightly as they gripped the pen. The air felt thick, charged with the weight of words she'd long buried. Nadia watched from across the room, her presence a quiet anchor, saying nothing, letting the silence invite Maya's voice. She stared at the blank page, heart pounding with that familiar hidden anxiety, a coil tightening in her chest. What if this changes nothing? What if I still hear him in my head, twisting my truths? The drawer beside her loomed in her peripheral vision, half open, its contents spilling shadows. Uri's letters, creased and faded, gifts that once seemed like love, but now whispered control. She had unlocked it weeks ago, confronting the recordings that replayed his gaslighting voice. "You're too sensitive, Maya. This is just how I care." Each listen had chipped at her numbness, but doubt lingered, urging her to soften the edges, to justify, to please, even in memory. No, not today. The pen scratched against paper, hesitant at first, then gaining force. "Dear younger me," she wrote, voiceover in her mind, narrating the raw spill. "You didn't imagine the ache. The way he made your boundaries feel like burdens, your feelings like flaws. It wasn't love that dimmed you. It was his hands, invisible, reshaping you to fit his quiet storms. Her breath hitched, anxiety flickering in her eyes, brows furrowing as tears blurred the ink. The conflict clawed inside. Part of her wanted to erase the lines, to say it was mutual, that she was the one who stayed too long. But she pressed on, honoring the survival that had kept her breathing through the fog. You fought in silence, and that was enough. You survived. Now, I see you, whole, not broken. The words flowed, a bridge from helplessness to something firmer, her own voice emerging like sunlight piercing clouds. She described the manipulations without excuse, the subtle dismissals, the emotional labor he demanded as devotion. No diminishing, no yielding to the old pull to appease. As she wrote, the anxiety ebbed, warming into acceptance, a gentle heat spreading through her limbs, softening the tension in her shoulders. Finished, Maya folded the letter carefully, placing it atop the letters in the drawer. Her hand hovered, then pushed it shut with a soft click. The symbol sealed it, the past compartmentalized, a boundary drawn not in anger, but in quiet resolve. She leaned back, exhaling, the room's muted tones wrapping around her like a balm. Nadia nodded, a small smile breaking the stillness. But as Maya rose, a whisper of question lingered in the air, unanswered. Could she truly release Yuri's grip, trusting that safety was hers to claim, scars and all? The drawer stayed closed, but the echo of doubt hummed faintly, waiting for the world beyond these walls. Finally, surrounded by those who had witnessed her growth, Maya gathered her friends for a moment of shared celebration. The soft hum of laughter filled Maya's apartment, a modest space, bathed in the late afternoon glow, filtering through gauzy curtains. Jonah arrived first, arms laden with takeout bags and a bottle of elderflower sparkling water. Her favorite, a quiet nod to the boundaries she'd started voicing. Then came Lena and Alex, the core of her small circle, their chatter weaving through the air like tentative threads testing the weave of her new self. Maya stood by the kitchen island, fingers tracing the edge of a wooden tray, her pulse a faint drumbeat of apprehension. What if they saw through her? What if this gathering, meant to celebrate her breakthrough, pulled her back into the old patterns, smiling too wide, nodding too eagerly, justifying their expectations to keep the peace? She exhaled, steadying herself. No more of that. Not tonight. As they settled on the worn couch, plates balanced on knees, Jonah leaned forward. So Maya, spill. What's this healthy trust you're talking about? We've seen the changes, but lay it out. How's it feel now? The question hung, probing, their eyes on her like spotlights. Internal tension coiled in her chest. Were they checking if she was fixed, ready to slip back into the reliable friend who absorbed everyone's needs? Lena nodded encouragingly, but Alex's casual grin felt like a test. Prove you're still you, but better. Maya's throat tightened, the familiar fear whispering that vulnerability would crack her open again. But she pushed through, voice steady at first, then gaining warmth. Healthy trust. It's not about proving I'm unbreakable. It's choosing who gets my energy, saying no without apology. Like when Jonah invited me out last week. I went, but on my terms. No late nights that drain me. It's trust that doesn't demand I erase my scars to fit. She paused, reaching for the shelf behind her. Her fingers brushed the musical box, a delicate porcelain thing she'd found in the locked drawer months ago. Not Yuri's gift, but one from her own childhood, tucked away like forgotten joy. She wound the key, and a lilting melody spilled out, notes dancing like sunlight on water. The sound wrapped around them, softening the edges of her words. Lena's eyes widened. That's beautiful. But, are you sure you're okay saying no to us? We don't want to push. There it was. The test. Maya's heart fluttered, apprehension lingering like a shadow. But she met their gazes. Voice, firm, yet kind. I am. And that's the trust. You respecting that boundary makes me feel seen, not sidelined. I don't owe the old me to anyone. Relief bloomed then, a slow warmth spreading through the room. Jonah raised his glass. To that, you're not just surviving, you're leading. Laughter returned, genuine now, bonds tightening as stories flowed, without her having to steer or soothe. Alex shared a vulnerability of his own, and Lena squeezed her hand. As the melody faded, Maya watched them, the question unspoken, but alive in her chest. Could she lean into this joy, let it settle, without the old pain's echo pulling her under? The night stretched on, possibilities humming softly.